President Trump might bring peace to Ukraine, but if you watch the mainstream media, he'll never be anything but Orange Hitler. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined as always by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
Is it Monday? It's Monday.
It absolutely is a Monday. I don't know if our DC politics editor, Chris Bedford, do you have a case of the Mondays? Is this a good Monday? How's it going?
My problem is I have an addiction to Sundays where I like to cook a big Italian meal after Mass and usually have a buddy over, comes over, helps us watch the kids, and we all hang out and martinis and wine. So, shake this habit because Mondays come a lot faster after a big Italian meal.
Well, I don't know if he had a big Italian meal or not, but President Trump had a very big weekend with President Putin, and legacy media is calling it useless, disappointing, and a failure. But speaking with Jake Tapper on CNN yesterday, Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff revealed the breakthrough that no one thought possible, Putin agreeing to sweeping new security measures.
We agreed to robust security guarantees that I would describe as game-changing. We didn't think that we were anywhere close to agreeing to Article 5 protection from the United States, in legislative enshrinement within the Russian Federation, not to go after any other territory when the peace deal is codified. Legislative enshrinement in the Russian Federation, not to go after any other European countries and violate their sovereignty. So we agreed to, there was plenty more.
All right, Matt, I want to start with you. How big of a deal is this that we're seeing right now? And I mean, we're dropping Article 5 already in their NATO and allies.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I mean, that was the whole reason for all of this, supposedly, in the beginning. But I just want to point out the look on Jake Tapper's face, because it's just, who the hell do these people think they are? They think they should basically regulate the President of the United States of America. They think that they should be in charge of the foreign policy of the United States of America. No one elected them. And yet they sit here with this look of judgment on their face, like, oh, we have to wring our hands because we're really the ones who should be in charge. We're very worried about the deal that they might strike with Russia. Look, this is a violent conflict that's been dragging on for a long time. Obviously, huge strides were made just meeting in the same place in America, in Alaska, which was appropriate. This is a good thing for the world.
So, Chris, why is it that every time that Donald Trump steps onto the world stage, the media is working overtime to say it's useless, disappointing, and failure, right? Like, we see this every time.
Well, first, I want to address how clear it is that Dr. Peterson came from an academic journal and news-breaking background, because we're all sociopaths here. I'm one of the people who definitely thinks we should be in charge. I'm ranting at the dinner table most nights about this or that, and my son actually repeats them at school. So hopefully they're pretty tolerant of that. They can't help it, and they don't know anything. They really don't. I mean, let's not even go back too far in the past about how little so much the DC press actually understands about national security. Is when Trump first came into office and he said NATO members should pay more, that was called undermining NATO security and undermining our alliances. Now, nobody could actually explain how asking NATO members to meet their treaty obligations to strengthen their own national defenses in a way that would actually make them more easy to repel a Russian invasion or any other kind of invasion of countries involved in this treaty would make the alliance weaker. But because so many people in DC don't know so much, but they all think they do, it's very easy to influence them. The blob would basically fill in their viewpoints. And we know, I mean, we've been talking about it for years now, but especially the last couple of weeks with all the new declassified documents on the CIA, FBI, et cetera, working against President Trump from before he even came into office. The blob was always extremely threatened by President Trump, any kind of a change to the status quo. So they would say things like, it's going to weaken the treaty, or Trump just had a meeting with Putin in Alaska that Zelensky wasn't at, and he didn't solve world peace. I mean, that's kind of a wild take. You saw massive concessions from Putin, not all public, some of them private. You saw Zelensky make concessions later today, not even wearing a suit. Granted, it was such an Eastern European suit. I just wanted to see track stripes up the side. It was kind of amazing. I've seen that also amongst the Irish, my own people. But he made concessions leading up to this about the willingness to actually swap territory. There were concessions from both sides. And you know what's funny? These European leaders who are kind of filling in all the gaps for the press, who really do think that the Russians might, if they don't get completely crushed and Putin's not overthrown, well, one, become democratic because it's more democratic, which is extremely unlikely. The people who will take control are much more likely to be significantly more hardline than Vladimir Putin. But two, that if they were incapable in 2 years of marching to Kiev, that they'll somehow turn around and be capable of marching to Paris. That doesn't compute either, but they don't ask themselves these questions. They don't get challenged on these sorts of subjects. It's very different. I mean, if you're talking to a bunch of people on the center right, including just us three, you're often going to get different takes on foreign policy and what's right, and different facts and things that you didn't know that are going to be inserted into that conversation. You'll be challenged. The same is not true in DC's kind of media and New York's media circles and the blob that they hang out with. People are generally in agreement because they often don't speak about any kind of specifics. They just speak in these broad, sweeping generalizations that make them feel good, but aren't often backed up beyond pretty airy-fairy notions.
Yeah, airy-fairy notions, belied, by the way, by the very serious books you have in the background, Chris. I like this location for you. I can see A New Birth of Freedom by Harry Jaffa in the background and other well-read tomes. I guess, I mean, we should recap a little bit. I mean, you and I were at the White House last time that Zelensky was there, not in the room, but in the building. Had to walk all the way around the damn building with all the fencing. And the excitement was palpable as people watched that unbelievable press conference. Well, Zelensky really stepped in it and did himself and his country a huge disservice. But now we see him coming back, and we do see the European leaders coming back around, and we see Putin coming around, and you sense hopefulness beyond the press that there might actually be a deal here to be made. But what they're trying to do now, right, is the same thing they've been doing for 10 years, same thing we've been talking about. And in the background, the subtext, right, is that Trump was compromised by Russia a long time ago. And it's interesting to bring that up now because it's just the way it falls on deaf ears, the way in which that myth has been finally, I think, shattered in front of the American people and even a lot of people in the middle. Do we have the shot of Swalwell on Trump and Russia? Can we roll that a minute?
If you're a Republican in Congress, you just saw a Kremlin kiss ass in the President of the United States. I don't know if Donald Trump is or is not a Russian asset. I do know that at press conferences like this and like at Helsinki, he certainly acts like one. Putin completely played Trump. This is entirely about Donald Trump refusing to release the Epstein files and in putting forward this scripted counter-programming to that. He made America weaker as perceived by the rest of the world, and he humiliated himself.
I mean, Chris, you look at this guy and his suit as well, talking about being scripted. What do you think this plays at all now?
I don't know who that plays to, except for the true believers. I actually saw a woman with every single liberal bumper sticker you could think about, including backing all the different prosecutors, half of whom are now under investigation, on the back of her cars. That's the person who Swalwell is speaking to, but I don't think he knows it. I mean, this is, I guess the Democrats were really excited. I get it, about the Epstein stuff. A lot of people were very excited about the Epstein stuff. And they had their first PR win that they've had against Trump since the assassination attempt, essentially. That was largely the only real score that they've gotten that had any small impact in polls. But it's over now. It's been deaded, as the youth are saying, I've heard. It's something that's not really going to have an impact. And it just sounds so far out of right field or left field, I guess in this case. It doesn't make any sense. It reminds me of previously in the first term talking to people about domestic policy, and Putin would somehow come up all the time, like that was some kind of a genius, brilliant, just penetrating truth to share. By the way, not actually backed by any evidence except for imagined evidence, and not actually backed by the history of American policy in this matter. Uh, it doesn't resonate, and I think they're going to have to find a new message that actually works, and they better come up with something fast.
Well, Matt, to your point, where we look at 2016, Donald Trump, they were using Russia to take him down, and it's so just incredible that we have this time right now where we are uncovering all the truths of the Russiagate hoax, and Donald Trump is on the precipice potentially of yet another peace deal. We've gone over all the numerous peace deals that he's had in his presidency, especially in that first term. But when you look at it right now, right, if he is able to start his second term off with a huge win, and oh, by the way, it's right there with Russia, who that's exactly what they used to try to discredit him the first time. Is this why they can't, they're trying to delegitimize this whole thing before it even starts?
Yeah, they're trying. I mean, the whole goal here has always been to say that Trump is not a legitimate president, right? I mean, he doesn't actually win. There's something intrinsically flawed about his relationship with Russia. He's a Russian stooge agent, whatever. All that stuff is now, as Chris said, the only people that plays through the people with the crazy bumper stickers. And so the next step is just for Trump to assume the legitimate throne by garnering wins. And he's already done that in 1,000 different ways. The tariffs worked, everything's fine, the economy's doing well. He's slowly fought for a number of issues that he's mainstreamed that are popular with the American people. Being tough on immigration didn't kill him. And so if you actually get, the president at the height of his powers, keeping peace in the worst conflict that is raging right now in the world, that is something that you just can't, you can't write it off. You can't make it go away. And so, we really are watching the collapse in a way of the Democratic Party in real time. I mean, I hesitate to say that. I hesitate to white pill too much on TV, but this is true. And so he's on the cusp of something very big. And it will be quite amusing to see the reactions. But what this does is it gives him legitimacy by doing rather than talking.
Do you know what one of my favorite dumb takes on this whole matter was the idea that Trump gave Putin a gift by inviting him to speak? It's not like he held a state dinner for him.
Right.
It's not like they lined up a big thing at the White House. It's not like he addressed a joint session of Congress. They met at a freezing cold Air Force base in Alaska under a display of American military might, surrounded by American troops and fencing and security. I would never want to see the president of the United States go to a country that was more powerful than the United States and not always on very good relationship to the United States to be at an Air Force base where he got treated to essentially a military parade in the air. That is not a show of power or legitimization for Putin any more than actually speaking to him. And I assume that some of these geniuses here in DC do want world leaders, especially ones who are involved in wars, to speak, but maybe they don't.
Well, when I look at this, I look at just where we were at this point in time during the Biden presidency. And if you'll remember, I think it was around the month of August that we had the failed Afghan withdrawal. Can you imagine how different this will be for Donald Trump if he goes out there and actually gets a peace deal done and not just, oh, you know what, we're going to leave this country that we've been at war with forever. We're going to leave billions of dollars of equipment behind. This would actually be a victory for humanity, Matt?
Yeah, win for the United States of America. Go figure. A wild time with a president who not only is able to speak, but speaks all the time. Most transparent president in history who's constantly talking to the press, has no problem sitting down and answering questions as opposed to Biden. And you have to start thinking, of course, as well about people already talking about the Nobel Prize and when the way that that's been given out before to Obama for, we're not sure, assuming the office and being named Barack Obama or whatever he got it for. You can see Trump, aggressively trying to be the peace president. And that's a winning notion. And if he actually gets the win here, I mean, this is not done. This is a complicated situation. That is yet another win that will go down in the history books. And you can see that's partly what the consternation is, right? They're going to have to try to taint this deal from the beginning and say it's bad news from the beginning. But the fact of the matter is, I think no one cares about these complaints, and people do want to see peace. And if that's actually done, people will rally to that, I predict. I don't have to tell you that the corporate right is collapsing under its own contradictions and cowardice, while the left is drowning in delusion and its own destructiveness. But NATCON, the National Conservatism Conference, is returning to Washington, D.C. this September 2nd through the 4th to celebrate the growth and success of the national conservative movement. We won. Some of its past speakers and adherents like J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and Stephen Miller are now, of course, in the Trump administration, turning those ideas into political reality. They've got a great slate of speakers this year. More are going to be announced. Trump administration officials are already lined up, like Tulsi Gabbard, Harmeet Dillon, Russ Vought, Senator Josh Hawley, Senator Eric Schmidt, Representative Riley Moore. People like Kevin Roberts at the Heritage Foundation will be there. And you're going to have the cultural iconoclasts like Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec, and others on the docket as well. And of course, I will be there too. I've been part of this since the beginning, and you should be there as well. If you want to be part of the most influential conservative conference in the world, join me at NatCon this September. You can get your tickets now at natcon.org. That's natcon.org.
Yes, and Donald Trump is making big moves at home. He's vowing to sign an order that will ban mail-in ballots and voting machines ahead of the midterms. Yes, get that excited, Chris Bedford. He had a Truth Social post. Trump wrote that, the very highly inaccurate, very expensive, and seriously controversial voting machines. He went on to write, "This is a massive voter fraud. We will begin this effort, which will be strongly opposed by the Democrats because they cheat at levels never seen before." And Trump wants to do this all with an executive order before the 2026 midterms. But Chris, we're all for the real elections around here, but that seems a little difficult to do this with an executive order.
I don't see where he's going to get the authority. I mean, the states are in charge of administering elections. They're supposed to administer them for the federal government. So he might be able to find a way through all of that to actually make a legal case. And Lord knows, we all know that he has really done a great job at some of these things, tackling some of these behemoths like birthright citizenship in a way that actually makes a strong legal argument for why this is actually should not be the law of the United States. It never really has been. It's been misinterpreted. With states and with mail-in balloting, that's a hard fight. I mean, there was a battle in the 2024 election between Republican Party officials who wanted to do everything they could to up Republican early voting, and President Trump, who would constantly put out truths and tweets and speeches attacking mail-in voting. And the worry was that it would depress Republican turnout. I think one of the tricks to mail-in voting, one of the best ways to probably actually get Democrats in blue states, where these are the problems in blue states, much more so than in red states, to get rid of mail-in voting is to give it a Republican advantage. I mean, once you start to see more Republican ballots coming in, and Republicans did historically well in mail-in voting in 2024, once you start to actually see an advantage to that, you start to get the more rural voters, maybe some of the older voters, some of the youth vote that seems to be switching over to the Republicans more and more these days, then you'll start to see Democrats turn on it. But without a legislative fix, it seems like a bridge too far. Hey, maybe I could be surprised. I'd be happily surprised, but it's a tough one.
Well, we've heard for years that this is just a right-wing conspiracy, but no, it's actually happening. It is happening in Democratic states. And you look at Michigan right now, it's days before a primary election, and there was a truck that just pulled up to the ballot box right there in front of City Hall in the middle of the night. Take a look.
All of a sudden, the lights turn on inside the truck. That's when you spot 3 men inside, including what appears to be Councilmember Abu Musa in the back seat, the same council member who is seeking re-election right now. The video then shows the driver getting out and stuffing absentee ballots into the drop box. The only problem? They don't all fit. He then starts pushing them in before reaching for 2 more stacks. only 4 days later. This time, a different car pulling up with what appears to be the same council member in the passenger seat. He then starts handing bundles of ballots to the driver, dropping off 3 large stacks.
Now watching that, I'm reminded of my old sports days. Because in SEC football, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, Matt. They're just going out there doing, hey, if everybody else is going to do this, I'm going to do it. Ooh, unfortunately, you got caught on camera doing this.
Well, you say something very true about life in general, Jill. Look, American elections, this was hilarious about all of this, have always, Democratic elections have always been fraught from the beginning with people who try to stuff the ballot and find an advantage. After all, you're talking about not just city councils, but the top spots in the world for political power. So of course, that people are going to try to game the system. And the great thing about videos like this with Mr. Abu there is, this stuff happens all the time, and you want to limit it. And the idea that it doesn't happen at all is a very strange psyop that occurred in the year of our Lord 2020, when no one was supposed to talk about any of this stuff happening. So a lot of this is common sense, and Trump's executive order may not be able to do much, but it is educatory. The president has an educatory function, and so the fact that he's talking about it is good because it's talking about the right things, which is how the hell do we secure the election process, and especially in blue states. And the more that people see things like that, the more hopefully they get angry and measures are taken to prevent it.
You say the 2020 election. The pandemic, as we all know, 43% of people used mail-in ballots to vote. Now, that was 30% this last election in 2024. So, Chris, it's down a little bit. But, I think that when you look at people on the right, it says 37% of people voted in person on Election Day. 35% of people voted in person for early voting. I'm like, yeah, that's all of us because we don't trust any of these people. But how do you go through and actually fix these steps? If Republicans want these things done, but even if it's going to happen in a blue state, what can be done?
Well, they have to do the hard work, and they have to do it ahead of time. So President Trump's on the right timeline here, over a year before the midterms, actually discussing this sort of thing, as opposed to it being something that we talk about in the weeks leading up to the election, because it's going to take serious time. It's going to take serious culture shifts, too, and rooting out corruption and actually prosecuting it. It's going to take the Department of Justice, for example, actually being present in Pennsylvania when judges who come up in Pennsylvania through the political system make it extremely, extremely difficult for Republican poll watchers to get access to anything, and then drag them off multiple times a day during Election Day. 2 different hearings where they have to get before the judge and are not actually allowed to be looking at anything. I had folks who used to be deeply involved in the corrupt aspects of Philadelphia politics who'd been kicked out because the unions and a lot of that sort of section of the Democrats are no longer in charge. Now that Philadelphia and other places have become more affluent and more woke, the left is much more in charge than these old school machine fixers. And they tell me it's called the blending room. All you need to do is get 1,000 ballots in, and once you get them into the stack, then you can't discount all these other ballots. You can't do that because then that would be taking away their vote. The way that Democrats have always defended this is by making voting rights just continuous with civil rights. And any move by Republicans to try to say, hey, we should have election security is called disenfranchising. You saw people playing guitar on the corners singing folk songs like they were 1959 in Washington, D.C. when Georgia passed basic ID laws. And basic laws tightening and putting restrictions on when elections actually take place. And of course, the vote, they were supposedly that was going to suppress the vote. Supposedly, African Americans were going to be unable to vote if you had to, have an identification, for example. But that didn't end up being the case. And Georgia had staggering and record-setting election turnout in its next election, and then everything just got quiet. If Republicans aren't afraid to be attacked on this subject, then they can make serious ground on the subject. But right now, they're afraid, and they're also disorganized. There's such a back and forth. They're not all united on this. Back and forth between, do we want to just increase our share of mail-in ballots? Do we want to ignore it and hope it goes away and rely on people showing up on Election Day and early voting? Or do we want to stop it? They have to get on the same team because Democrats are all on the same team.
Well, I will say our audience is on the same team because the people who are out there, who are the voters in America and Trump's base, are well aware of this issue, and they really want Republicans to stand up, Jill.
Well, Chris, this is not goodbye because you have the big interview today. We'll be looking at your interview with former D.C. commissioner. So when did Washington, D.C. become a war zone? We'll have all that for you just ahead. Well, I want to pause for a second and talk to you directly because at Blaze Media, truth, freedom, and faith in God and country, they're not just slogans, they're values that we live by every single day. So we want to give you something to carry into your week, and it keeps you grounded in those values. So starting this Sunday, we're launching a brand new series called Sunday Revival. Every Sunday morning on Blaze TV, you'll get inspiring messages from voices like Pastor Jack Graham of Prestonwood Baptist, Pastor Alan Jackson of World Outreach Church, and many, many more. So no matter how chaotic the world feels, Sunday Revival is here to help you grow in your faith and stay rooted in God's Word and start your week with purpose. So join us this Sunday on Blaze TV, and let's begin the week together with inspiration, strength, and faith.
Now we welcome Denise Rucker-Krepp, who is a former Obama appointee, an American Coast Guard veteran, and also a former commissioner in Washington, D.C. to the Advisory Neighborhood Commission 6B10, is where you were elected for 2014 until 2022. Thank you for joining us, Denise.
Thanks for having me today.
You're a lifelong Democrat, to the
Yes.
point that you even caught the attention of the Obama administration, as I understand, still a Democrat, but you've been someone who's been very vocal. When I lived in Capitol Hill, in your neighborhood, it was very vocal on the issue of crime. And
Yeah.
and the kind of situation that brought us from where this city was in 2019, I've been here since 2004 or so, to where we got to in 2022. What changed? What made the city from such an upward trajectory to suddenly one where we're seeing federal law enforcement in the streets trying to enforce laws? Why is that necessary? How did we get here?
The DC Council. Let's just be honest. It was the DC Council. Yeah, they were writing laws. They were writing laws that were telling juveniles. And by the way, we got to unpack juveniles. Okay. So when I was a kid, a juvenile was somebody under the age of 18. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But according to the DC Council, a juvenile is somebody under the age of 24.
That's wild.
Yeah, let me repeat that. 24 years old. So they were saying, hey, you're a juvenile until you're 24. You could have kids, but you yourself are a juvenile. And we're not going to consider, you fully developed, that you will be fully accountable for your crimes. And I remember going to Charles Allen at the time, who's the Ward 6 council member, going, Charles, what are you doing, dude? I mean, a 24-year-old man is a man, not a juvenile. And if you tell a 24-year-old that if they commit armed carjacking and they won't be held fully accountable, then what do you think is going to happen? And he just blew me off and he said, Denise, I know what I'm doing. Okay. You definitely knew what you were doing. You pretty much invited President Trump to come in and bring the National Guard in to solve your problem, which you created. That's why we're here.
At the age of 24, I knew some of my best friends were 24-year-olds. They were 2 years out of the Marine Corps already with corps of combat under their belts. They were full-blown adults and a long way toward it. So Charles Allen, there was a recall petition for him. He's kind of seems like the left-wing leader of the D.C. City Council, or one of the most vocal champions of some of these causes. Where did he come from? I was in D.C. for years, and I never really heard his name until I moved to Capitol Hill.
So he was the chief of staff for Tommy Wells, his predecessor, who was the Ward 6 council member. And then he, I believe, had played at the national level and done some politicking for national level Democrats before working for Tommy Wells. He's not from Washington, D.C. He never served in the military. And quite frankly, I don't know what he's doing. And I say that as a Democrat about another Democrat. He is not somebody that I thought was a good representation of Ward 6. And Ward 6, for folks who don't live in Washington, D.C., includes Capitol Hill. It includes the Supreme Court, includes Congress. And so the decisions he was making was not only impacting those of us who live here, but individuals who come here as elected officials at the federal level. It wasn't a good thing.
So what happened to this recall petition? It seems like there was enough anger amongst. I mean, DC is 94% Democrat, and with a smattering of libertarian Republicans and Romney
Yeah.
types. It's not by any stretch a red area, but there was enough anger amongst your fellow Democrats that there was a recall petition, and yet it
Yeah.
failed.
Yeah, it failed. And I think it failed because people looked at the recall effort and said it was funded by Republicans. And when people said that, I laughed. I said, "Are you kidding me? It wasn't funded by Republicans. It was funded by Democrats. It was Democrats telling Charles Allen that what he was doing was unacceptable." Unfortunately, the majority of Democrats did not agree with that. And Charles disliked me so much that he moved me out of the ward. That was so for those of us he disagreed with, he moved us to Ward 7. So I didn't physically move my house, but via the political mechanisms he was using, I got moved to another ward so that I could not. I had been considering running against him, but and he knew that, so that's why he moved me.
What is
Yeah.
we're now a couple days into this operation from the federal government.
Mhm.
You see some people on the news. I mean, the Washington Post interviewed someone who said, "Yeah, I got stabbed, but I don't feel unsafe. I got stabbed right next to the Capitol, but I don't feel unsafe." They're finding some kind of wild people that say that the city, the crime rate is fine.
Mhm.
What do you tell those people about what it actually feels like here on Capitol Hill and what it's felt like these past 4 years on Capitol Hill regarding the actual crime rate?
I say come to my neighborhood, and I live 18 blocks from the Capitol. I live half a block from the National Guard Armory. I've had a shootout in front of my house. Two men were on opposing sides of the block and started shooting at each other. I've had a man shoot a gun off in front of my house. I've had armed carjackings, rapes, muggings, burglaries, stabbings, assaults. I'm sorry, I can't name all the crimes. So I'm not really sure why they didn't come to my block, but that's what's going on my block. And those crimes are unacceptable. Those crimes should not be occurring. And we need help in stopping those crimes. But the biggest help we need right now is two things. One, we need more prosecutors. So we need the president to devote more prosecutors to the new U.S. Attorney's Office, who, by the way, loving her, absolutely loving the message that she has no tolerance. But the other thing we need to do is change the D.C. laws. I mean, the fact that we consider a 24-year-old a juvenile is insane. A 24-year-old is a man. A 24-year-old who commits armed carjacking should not be told, there, we don't think you're fully developed. It should be, congratulations, you've committed a crime, you're going to jail, and you're staying there. So again, two things. Give more attorneys to the U.S. prosecutor, and two, change the D.C. laws that put us in this situation.
So I lived in that same neighborhood, about 1 block from the National Guard Armory, 18 blocks from the Capitol. And it was a nice family neighborhood when I moved there in 2019. It was a lot of young people walking babies around, a lot of people walking dogs. You'd have package thieves. It was basically all the time you'd get package stolen. But it changed so much after the school shut down and the law stopped being enforced. I remember walking home from work one night in the fall, so it was dark already, and I ended up realizing I was walking through an open air gun market. They were selling nines, and I realized that's not a measurement for drugs. You're selling handguns right here on the street on a main thoroughfare of Washington, D.C. And the police actually did end up responding. They went all around, but they had spotters. So when squad cars and unmarked cars came in from all around, spotters up the block told them this was organized activity. What's the sort of response that you've seen, though, and the communication that you've had with the Metropolitan Police Department? Have they just given up? I mean, sometimes I'd call the police and they'd say, "What do you want me to do?"
Yes.
Somebody just hit and ran and they slammed into a post office truck, a federal vehicle, and then they sped off in a stolen car. And he's like, "Oh, well, what do you want me to do? They're probably gone by now." Or do you generally find that police officers wished that they could do more and just felt their hands were tied?
The latter. I've come to know a lot of the police over the years because I've lived here for almost 25 years in the house that I'm in. And over the years, I've been hearing more and more, I wish I could do more. I wish I could do things. But the next sentence usually is, I can't because of laws written by the DC Council, one, or two, there aren't enough of us. The police are retiring numbers that are just stunning. So if we have police retiring and prosecutors, which was happening under the Biden team and the Obama team, not prosecuting, we're in a very dangerous situation. So I guess I should add a number 3, which is we need more police. We need to fully fund the police. Now, one of the problems we're having right now is that Congress needs to pass that legislation to help us get that money out of our budget, because there's a freeze right now. And that's what I'm hearing from the police, is that the mayor is saying until Congress releases that money, she's not hiring any more police. So it's police retiring and then the lack of hiring.
Is that
That's a
tied to the
problem.
budget, or is that
Yeah.
specific legislation?
It is. I think we're at like $1 billion Congress has got a hold on right now for the DC budget. And that's tied into it. So we really do need them to release that money so that we can hire more police. Because if they don't do that, they've got a hiring freeze right now and they're not going to hire more police. That's a problem.
So I was a DC Democrat, but not like you. I was not getting appointments from Obama nor voting for him. But I became a Democrat because of what I saw, the treatment of Adrian Fenty, the young, charismatic reformer whose cardinal sin against Washington was saying maybe we shouldn't be graduating high schoolers who are uneducated and literally illiterate. And this is a serious problem, because what's the future for these kids? You can't even join the military. You can't. There's no opportunities except for menial labor or crime if you can't read, if you can't spell, if you can't communicate, if you don't have any skills. And because of that, he was thrown out. But then we go through, you have Mayor Gray, and now we have Muriel Bowser. What's the story with the mayor? She seemed to me to be just another one in the kind of 2000s tradition of pro-business, kind of moderate DC mayors, but she changed her tune so much in 2020 with President Trump coming here and with BLM Plaza and this and that. And now she seems to be working closely, or 2016, excuse me. Now she seems to be working closely with the president. And maybe she's just a hostage politically to the situation, but seems to be cooperating much more fully than the city council. What's the background on Muriel Bowser?
Bowser has been fighting with the DC Council for years. The DC Council was writing the laws that were saying, hey, again, to the juveniles, they're not going to be held accountable. And the mayor was going, I don't agree with that. The mayor is not where the DC Council is. Again, if folks want to point fingers, and we should, by the way, it's the DC Council. Bowser did not agree to that big, I'm going to call it their crime bill they were trying to pass at the end of 22 and beginning of 23. I mean, she refused to sign it. And not only did she refuse to sign it, but you had the House and the Senate that said no to the DC Council. So Bowser is very moderate. Bowser is good on crime. But she has Phil Mendelssohn and she has Charles Allen. And as long as you have those two in the DC Council, we're going to have the situation we have right now.
So I know you're busy and have to go, but I have one more question that our viewers all around the country are dying to know. What has been the actual reaction outside the pages of the Washington Post or outside the CNN reporters who are pretending that they've never been afraid of crime in this city? Has the reaction been mixed, or is it angry? I mean, DC is a pretty independent city that doesn't love Donald Trump, but people are also afraid. So what kind of feedback have you been hearing from your neighbors on Capitol Hill?
It's mixed, and we're blessed to have a lot of people in our neighborhood, and it's a very diverse mix. I think you've got some people that are afraid of having the National Guard. You have some people that aren't paying attention. And then you have some people very quietly saying, hey, maybe this is a good thing. I mean, just a second ago, you said, the Democrats who were pretending that they weren't afraid of crime. I was amazed when I was elected official, the number of people, both Democrat and Republican, who came to me and said, you keep on going, Denise, keep on doing what you're doing. They won't say it loudly, but quietly they'll whisper and say, they'll say, I too am afraid of crime. I mean, look what Carl Racine said on his way out the door as Attorney General. He was afraid of carjacking. He was afraid that his family was going to be carjacked. If the DC Attorney General is saying that out loud, then everybody else is too, whether or not they're going to admit it.
Yeah, I always wonder that, because Charles Allen has a wife and children in the district. I'm thinking, what are you doing, putting them at risk like that? But that's interesting. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective.
Well, thanks for having me. And folks, I've lived in DC for a long time, and I love my city. I just want a safe city. That's all I want. Right.
I miss 2019. It was
a
wonderful time.
So do I.
Denise Rucker-Krepp, thank you for joining us, and thank you for serving.
Thank you. Take care.
We will become MS Now, which stands for my source for news, opinion, and the world. And look, Andrew, they even have a graphic up. I like it.
There it is.
Actually,
the new logo.
It looks very sporty.
And look, they even have a new graphic up. Everybody at home, this is normal. We're just redoing everything.
The graphic looks great. I'm not sure what it is, but good stuff. Yeah, biggest move since CNN Plus. I like
That's it. Yes, it definitely is. So with all that in mind, things are changing over at MSNBC. So I posted on X. What do you make of MSNBC's name change? Will this actually change anything? Darren wrote that we've been changing the facts for years, so we felt it time to change our logo while we're at it. Great snarky comment to start things off. I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how MSNBC just rightly became the punching bag, the poster boy for everything wrong with media today.
Greg replied that they should just call it BS now.
Simple.
Simple, effective.
Fair enough. Yeah, we like that. Okay.
And JD rounds it out and says, I think it's quite gauche for their network to demand multiple sclerosis now. I can't even say it. That's
multiple sclerosis.
Sclerosis now.
MS now. That's terrible. That's
This
terrible,
is-
man. That's bad. That's bad. Makes me laugh.
But like, I look at this and go, okay, so NBC clearly wants nothing to do with whatever is happening at MSNBC. So they're like, you know what? You can't use our name. We're taking our name back. And you are basically being put in timeout. And so you have to have now as your name. MS Now is going to be, I mean, CNN Plus didn't last for that long. How long do we think MS Now is going to be around for?
I think for as long as people want MS. I mean, I'm going to think of the multiple sclerosis every time. It's terrible. MS Now, damn it. We want it now, and look at this logo that doesn't make any sense, that has a little dash of maybe an American flag in it too, which is kind of funny. Yeah.
Well, I would much rather have some sailboat nationalism in my life than anything else at this point in time. Summer's coming to an end, but it could be summer all year with our
something
third
like
issue
this,
of
Jill,
Frontier
something
magazine.
like this. I mean, look at that cover, folks.
That flag, way better.
I mean, I was looking at this last night because I had some friends over, not unlike Chris, a late Sunday night at the Peterson house, and many gins and tonics, and just started sailing away on the cover. But this thing, I mean, the fact that we have this incredible article about Kanye in here and his sort of fall from grace by someone who was there and knows him, this insane report about Syria's Bloody Crescent from a guy who actually went there and traveled in very dangerous places to bring you this wild article about a true frontier.
I know somebody else who traveled to Syria recently.
Yes.
Talked about that on the
Congressman
show.
Mills
It's
did
not the
that.
same person.
And then also the hilarious ads, like not. Well, I'm not gonna read that one.
There's some good stuff in there.
I mean, subscribe to Frontier. It is incredible, and the secret is definitely getting out.
Yep.
People come to us and want to write for this thing. Award-winning authors will be, writing for us. They already have. They will be in the future. I can say Tucker Carlson just agreed to an interview. We
Breaking
want
news.
a long, old Playboy-style interview, not the pictures, just the words. We're going to ask him some questions that no one else asks, and that's the kind of stuff that's in Frontier. And I just feel like, the future isn't MS Now. The future is full products like a beautiful magazine like this and the other amazing things that are coming to Blaze Media, and that's the future, and that's the future we're building. Well, they scream MS Now.
And while they scream MS Now, we'll be going to NATCON. You've been talking about it. I'm really excited. You're going to be one of the speakers there. They're allowing you up on stage. They think you're smart.
It's ridiculous.
You're going to be up there featured. I'll be out there like taking pictures and making sure that everybody sees the speech.
Heckling.
Like a proud, like TV mom over here. But no, I'm excited. Like there's so many more things that are exciting on the right that are happening right now. You see the leftists, you see all the people with the blue hair. I saw a note on X the other day. They're like, hey, not a lot of Antifa things going on lately. USAID isn't being funded anymore. I wonder if those two things are connected, right? Like they don't have anything unless it's AstroTurf, unless it's paid for by like a George Soros foundation. And we have all these exciting things now that are coming up on the right.
You see the left dwindling, right? They're just kind of fading away. And meanwhile, we're building. And the National Conservative Conference is interesting because in the beginning, this is NATCON 5 coming up. Count them, 5, right? And in 5 conferences, you now have something that represents the MAGA Maha movement that's actually in power, and we won. And this was exciting in the beginning. It was, it was considered edgy. Everyone was writing about all the different figures who were there, and we weren't supposed to all get together and talk about changing policy on the right. And they've actually let me speak a few times over the years, Jill. It's kind of surprising. They let me get up on stage and pontificate. And I spoke about building a new media, some years ago. I remember Jack Posobiec was there egging me on in the audience. And Vivek Ramaswamy was talking about it, but I was going a little further than he was, saying we really need to build Red State America up. And now that's all of America. Now that's J.D. Vance. I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up, at this one and gives a rousing speech, because this was the movement that retooled the Republican Party and that came behind Trump, gave him support. And now it'll be a great celebration in the beginning of September. And it's exciting stuff. It's not like people talking and the old white paper thing. There's always new ideas and challenges and people debating things, because it's where the life is. It's where the party is now.
So I thought, all right, you're going to go. Why don't I go? Why don't we just do our show in D.C. like we do? Yes. It'll be a fun one. And, honestly, I'm really excited to see DNI Tulsi Gabbard. Just everything that she's doing that we talk about here on the show, all the document releases. I mean, I love it when Steve Baker is on here, because he says, she's not even being political. The people that are on her team are like, hey, I wish you would actually be more political and not do, like a Friday news dump with your first massive breaking news stories. This isn't how it works. But there's so many things that she in particular is doing right now. I'm very interested to hear what she has to say. Yeah,
there'll be several administration officials there that have been announced so far. As I said earlier on the show, Russ Vought, OMB, is doing an incredible job. They're cutting. He's a very smart guy. But Tulsi really is the new star now for people in our audience, because she's putting her money where her mouth is. She doesn't care about the DC stuff, and she's releasing things. And, she also carefully put together her team, right? She didn't just waltz in there and bring, celebrity influencers along with her. She brought very serious people that she slowly has put together on her team, and she's doing the real job. And that's exciting. And these kinds of events are important because everyone gets together and in this case celebrates and then argues about what should happen now in the future. And it's not, a moot point. It's not like a speculative hypothetical argument. It's what should Tulsi do now, because she's doing things and going to continue to do things for real while sitting in power. So it's a celebration of that. And everyone there wants to actually move the ball forward.
But if you watch legacy media, or the Clintons in particular, Tulsi Gabbard, just a Russian agent. That's why you can't watch them anymore. That's why MS Now is not going to matter what they call it. Nobody believes them anymore. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
The Blaze /Frontier. The Blaze /